And we are back, everybody, here on Agenda 31. Coming at you on No Agenda Stream and NoAgendaStream.com. This is Todd McGreevy and Corey Ibe. We're in the second hour of our 2-hour pre-recorded show on March 8th, 2014. We appreciate you listening and downloading this audio file. You talked about in the previous hour, how you're very, because you're so confident in how you identify yourself and where you are domiciled, that you are one of the people of California 1849, which, by the way, you've pointed to the Supreme Court case, Texas v. White, as evidence that these jurisdictions do exist contemporaneously, that being Constitution of 1849 and the codified administrative Constitution, or the Constitution that outsourced administrative duties, if you will, of 1879, that they do coexist.
They do.
And
and there is a real difference between the two. Like I mentioned earlier, the California, as defined by its Constitution of 1849, is one of the states that's guaranteed a Republican form of government in the Constitution. California state, as defined by its Constitution of 1879, is not one of the states guaranteed by the Constitution to a Republican form of government.
It's a critical distinction. And,
huge.
And that guarantee of a Republican form of government, we've talked about that on this show before with the help of Tim from Illinois. And if you go to thirdrailblog.com, you'll see those Supreme Court cases on the left side. We should dive into those again. I'm excited to play this clip coming up here. It's about 15 minutes long. And this is the Officer August clip, is what I'd like to tee up a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you've said that you're very confident and ready, willing, and able to defend your position peacefully is the key term here. Defend your position peacefully of who you are, how you identify yourself, and how you conduct yourself. And I've been privy to a lot that we haven't even aired on the show over the last 2 years we've worked together, Corey, and I'm really impressed with how you do handle yourself. This we're gonna only play 15 minutes of this. I'm a geek about this subject matter, so it's riveting to me. And I guess if you're continuing to listen to this in the second hour, it might be riveting to you as well. But this is, I think, only 15 minutes of a 45-minute stop.
The entire stop was about an hour and a half.
Oh my!
Yeah. So there was all the silent period has been edited out. There's quite a bit of time where Officer August, who is the sergeant in charge of traffic operations in Irvine, reviewing documents and being very methodical about how he went about conducting himself at this stop. The audio starts after the stop has been initiated and after I've already given him a copy of my common law ID and some other documents that are designed to explain my position, to give him an idea of where we're at. And it picks up when he comes right back to the car. And
a little more context, though, is that this is shortly after you obtained the California exempt license plate for the automobile that the state owns.
That's correct.
Yeah, and that's a critical distinction. And for people new to this subject matter, Corey's trajectory, if you will, that got him here included rescinding his contractual obligations with the DMV, canceling his. He goes into it, and I don't want to give that away. But what I'm getting at is the reason he was even pulled over is because this guy saw a plate that he couldn't believe. It was exempt. It looked like government plates on a late model Mercedes.
That's right. In fact, the only time they are government plates. The only thing you see these plates on are government vehicles, buses, cop cars,
right.
Anything to do with a government operation has these license plates on it. I obtained them for my car based on following law, not using, very open about how I obtained the plates. But it is something that is so foreign to the brain conditioning that everyone's had that it really had the officers freaking out. So,
yeah, we'll go ahead and play this.
Corey, are we still on terms where I can call you Corey?
Yeah.
Okay. Some of this paperwork I have not seen before, so I'm trying to understand it as best I can.
Okay.
You realize at one point you did acknowledge you had a driver's license in California because you did have one?
At one point, there was a license issued. I've
Yeah.
canceled it, and I can provide you a letter. I don't have it with me, but I
Okay.
can provide you a letter from the DMV that it was being canceled.
Okay.
The reason why it was canceled is both my signature
Okay.
and the picture associated with that have been removed. It was that's part of what it is the manifestation of my displeasure with Washington D.C.
Okay.
There's an element of political pledging with the application for a driver's license, and that's what has
So
been
basically
rescinded.
accepting the state's governance and over you and all that type of stuff, or?
No, that's not it. The state exists legitimately, and that's not at all the question here. The question is authority, so in jurisdiction. I'm sorry, not authority, but jurisdiction. For example, I'll give you an example that is a pretty big deal up in L.A. I was involved in a case up in L.A., and there was an LAPD officer who I believed exceeded his jurisdiction. I was able to show that he did, and he acted as a peace officer or an officer of the state. And you'll find now that's changed the behavior of the LA County Recorder's Office.
Okay.
And Chief Beck acknowledged to me from his office and thanked me for bringing it to his attention that only the oaths of office are held at the county recorder's office only for officers of the state.
Okay.
Now, I think it's People versus Battle. I can't remember exactly, but the courts said that there are clearly two governments in each state.
Okay.
We have a state government and a federal government.
Okay.
The state government that we see today is a franchise of the federal government, as I mentioned before, by voluntary consent of the people, but that doesn't mean the original state government doesn't exist. And so what we have right now is my jurisdiction being in California 1849.
Okay.
Doesn't give me a free ride. I'm still responsible to follow all the rules and everything, which is why there's plates on the car, why I gave you identification,
Sure.
everything else. But it means a different set of rules apply than what maybe, not what maybe, but what virtually every law enforcement officer that I've come in contact with realized, including LAPD. But now, with this example with LAPD, let's say I was standing on the sidewalk in front of Parker Center and they felt that I was a violation of LA City Code.
Okay.
They would have to call the sheriff and have the sheriff come in, because the sheriff has jurisdiction in the sheriff's department in California State 1879, but the sheriff's office, and their oaths are according to this, also has jurisdiction in California 1849, and that's why their oaths are held at the county recorder's office. So it wouldn't be that they couldn't do anything,
Okay.
but to properly process any charge that they would have to hold me like any other citizen, and then have a sheriff come down and file a complaint.
So is it different if you get stopped by a deputy sheriff for a motor vehicle violation?
No, because the motor vehicle violation would... are you familiar with California Vehicle Code 21052?
Which one is that?
It covers who the code applies to.
Okay.
And
I'll look it up.
Okay.
Did you say that you had not had contact with us before?
The word contact has a very specific meaning, so I'm not recalling a contact with Irvine PD.
Okay.
I've talked to Irvine PD.
I mean, have you ever been stopped by Irvine PD?
Not
and
that
issued
I-
a citation?
Not that I recall. A parking ticket.
No, I'm talking traffic stops, where you received a citation and filed a suit against one of our officers or threatened to file a suit.
No.
Okay.
No, look, I'm very careful about making sure it's not personal.
Okay.
Right?
He's relying on his training that you might be a sovereign citizen, Corey.
Well, and I think what might have gotten around or brought up that comment was a parking ticket that I had received from Irvine, and responded with, and this is on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Corey Ibe. You can see how I handled the parking ticket. Somehow maybe one of the dispatchers or something said, hey, this guy tried to sue us or whatever, and that wasn't the case at all. It was simply with the parking ticket that, okay, I'll conditionally accept this ticket, but if you go ahead and let me pay it at the DMV, then you guys are going to owe me a whole bunch of money. And they ended up not transferring that ticket to the Department of Motor Vehicles. So that's the only contact or interaction I'd had with Irvine Police Department prior to this stop with Officer August.
Relax. Sorry, she's hungry.
What's that?
She's hungry, sorry.
Oh, okay. You live in Laguna? Is that where you stay?
Well, that is a mailing address that I use, and I keep where I sleep at night very private.
It's a P.O. box.
Yeah.
Well, let me finish up my research and we'll get you on your way.
Okay.
Is that fair?
I appreciate your service, and however I can help.
All right. Thanks, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Corey?
Yeah.
So you were saying this is the first time that a private vehicle's ever been given an exempt license status?
That I'm aware of.
Okay, because It looks like you just got this done recently, because when I run the VIN
It's
number,
yeah.
it comes back to another plate that has expired registration, but it shows this is in process. You just had this issued like a week and a half?
I think it was May 16th or so.
Okay.
That's after nearly 3 years of dealing with the DMV.
Really?
Yeah.
With the same car?
Not the same car, just the same issue.
Same issue?
Right.
Okay. And why do they finally issue you the exempt license plate?
Because the director, George Valverde, faced losing his job if he didn't do it.
I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I'm just trying to figure out and make sense of
Look,
this.
I can appreciate that this can be a difficult stop for you. And so my goal as one of the people of California is to affect a government in a positive way.
Okay.
So I hope that this is a positive contact.
No, you've been
all the way
very,
around.
very polite, because, like I said, officers and myself have stopped people who claim to be sovereign citizens.
Right.
And they put very different stuff on, and they're very, very argumentative and very confrontational. So I appreciate your candor and the way you've been treating this.
Thank you.
And allowing me the time to kind of research this a little bit, so I make an appropriate decision on how I'm going to proceed, which is in our both of our best interests. If that's okay with you, if you don't mind giving me a couple minutes to do that.
Absolutely.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
All right. Is your dog going to survive?
I think she'll make it.
Who's the guy that almost lost his job? The director of what?
Well, the George Valverde is the director of the DMV, and I had positioned it such that if they did not issue the plates, my next step was to go after his job for illegally levying upon property, which is enumerated in the law that is a crime, and if you're convicted of that crime, you would lose your job. So getting those plates issued, if they decided that they were going to say, no, we're not going to issue the plates and we want money from you, I was prepared to go after the job of the director of the DMV.
And for clarification, the plates that were issued were exempt California plates, and I've seen the actual registration. I think you've posted it out there in the ether, if you will.
Oh yeah.
If you search engine, Corey Ibe exempt, CA plates, you'll probably find it. It says there, amount for the registration 0, and then until 2099 or something like that.
That's right. Yeah, and something that is fascinating amongst people who want to be able to travel is there is a huge amount of case law that says the government cannot regulate the use of an automobile, classifies an automobile as personal goods, so many things that are geared towards an automobile. Yet our conditioning is such that a lot of people don't realize that your car with the registration tags on it is not an automobile. It's a passenger vehicle. So you have to, no different. In fact, in a passenger vehicle, you are allowed to be paid money to transport passengers around. And that's a new industry that has popped up here in Orange County and I think all over the country, where it's an alternative to taxis. That somebody can contact you from an internet connection or something like that, and you can go and pick them up in your personal passenger car. Yeah. They pay you money, and you take them wherever they want. You have the license for it. The registration covers that type of activity. But an automobile would not qualify for that. An automobile is personal goods, and the registration clearly says automobile permanent exempt.
And so the DMV issued this exempt plate because they considered it to be a personal, or because you, through the use of your very carefully controlled signature as the representative of the birth certificate, showed them that the birth certificate is owned by the government, as is the automobile, the car, the vehicle, and subsequently it is a government vehicle. I thought that was what your approach was.
It was. Well, the birth certificate, that person is government property, and that's who the automobile is registered to. In paperwork that I have, which was filed at the Secretary of State, I have a financial interest in that person, but it's not me. I'm not that person. So the registration went to a government entity, which is very compliant with law. It's very clear that there shall be no registration upon state or federal property. And the birth certificate is state property, which is federal. And it was really no problem at the DMV to get it issued. Now, before I had gone in there to get those plates, I think it's important to note that the driver's license had been rescinded, and I no longer occupied the political office of the birth certificate, leaving it as just property of the government. And it was really a relatively pain-free operation going in. It took all of maybe 10 to 12 minutes in order to get the plates issued. They challenged me on it, and I responded that The registration was going to an individual, because that's what the birth certificate is. It's an individual, and it's property of the state of California. And so when they asked me, what is this? I said, it's an individual, property of the state of California. And my signature at the bottom is clear that I'm not that person. I am the authorized representative of that office. And it was no problem getting the plates issued.
Yeah, that was a big deal. And that was the culmination of the odyssey of, as you said to Officer August, years of effort. And
yeah.
And so this, if I there's 7 minutes left. I do want to play this because I think it's worthy of hearing. And but this stop, he pulled you over because clearly he just had never seen this before, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So there was no supposed infraction like your left turn signal didn't work or you were weaving or anything like that.
Right. It simply was that when they saw that, it's not a typical government vehicle. It was an old Mercedes 300E. Mm-hmm. Pretty obvious that it's not owned by what they consider an agency of the government, like Rapid Transit District. It's not a police car. Right. It's not anything like that. It's just an automobile, which is classified as personal goods. And so he pulled me over for that. So the stop itself, I never brought this up, especially given the behavior of Officer August. His conduct was exemplary during the entire stop. And so I never brought up the issue that it was illegal for him to pull me over because he thought that, the plates were wrong.
Right.
It's all a learning process, being the first one in California that I'm aware of to be able to obtain this type of plate. Is certainly going to garner attention. 2 days before this stop, I was actually traveling through Huntington Beach and had quite a circus, so to speak, of at least a dozen cop cars that had kind of surrounded me as I was leaving the town. They didn't pull me over or stop me, and I did have a conversation with the watch commander at the time. And, their attitude was clear that their thought was, we have a sovereign citizen here. And the different police agencies, I'm sure, communicate with each other. Mm-hmm. So that may have been something that, was communicated to Irvine or even put a lookout for the plate. And with all the cameras they've got everywhere, it wasn't hard for them to find me. Mm-hmm. And that's where this stop came about. Anytime
I'll loan you one of my discs.
I appreciate that. All right. Let me just finish this up and I'll have you out of here.
Okay.
I'm not inclined, based on what I'm seeing thus far, to issue a citation. But I would like to do as much research as I can at least share it with some of the people that work for me. If that.
Absolutely. And I tell you what, I'm happy to give you my contact information.
Okay.
If command structure at Irvine would like me to come in. I just got back a few days ago, met with Investigator Taft from the Orange County Sheriff's Office.
Department? Okay.
And went in. We had an hour and a half to kind of go over everything because this is all new to them.
Yeah.
And I actually have an engagement going on with one of their officers that
as a result of an issue.
As a result of an issue,
or?
a contact, where he decided that he was going to just go ahead and push through with a citation, and I complied all the way through.
Sure.
Once I signed it, then it was like, okay, now we're going to go to court and talk about it. And so while we were there, he gave me back some of the property that was confiscated, and we had a good opportunity because, like I say, my goal is to, from my perspective, I think government needs to change behavior in certain areas. And in order to have the legal foundation to affect that kind of change, it requires converting my status into being one of the people.
Okay.
And with that must be very strange to law enforcement.
It is. It's a little unusual, so I'm trying to gain an understanding of it and being respectful of what you're trying to accomplish and what your beliefs are, while balancing my responsibilities, but also making sure that we learn appropriately how to handle situations like this. And we run into situations where someone's as compliant and cooperative and willing to talk about what you're all about. It's an opportunity for us to learn. So I'm sure these stops become very prolonged for you when you do have contact with the police, but I'm trying to be as respectful and polite as I can. I appreciate the
Believe me,
demeanor.
I knew what I was doing. This is not something that I did.
I'm sure.
So,
I can't imagine you just go out and say, well, we'll see what happens today. It's just,
well, first off, if you just go into the DMV, they're not going to issue these plates.
Sure. I'm sure it's just taking, like you said, several years worth of work and a lot of research and a lot of documentation. So
exactly.
It's very unique.
Part of the job is going to involve these types of contact.
Right.
And I look at it as an opportunity as well to show how our government grows over time, how our nation matures, and this may be a process of it.
Okay. Okay, but you are willing to come in and talk and do all that type of stuff?
Absolutely, I'd be honored to come in and talk.
So, let me...
I'll give you my card if you want my card.
Do you have a card?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the cell phone number and your email?
Yeah. It actually rings to my cell phone.
Oh, okay.
If I'm out of the area, it'll go to voicemail and then send me an email.
And then these are blogs that you post on? Or?
Yeah, I got some YouTube videos, and you'll notice every single one, everything that I do. I'm very pro law enforcement.
Okay.
I'm very anti those guys that say don't roll your windows down, stuff like that. I say the exact opposite.
Okay.
I want to treat things like, what if my great grandfather were here and I was with him? He'd be upset if
you didn't.
If I didn't,
sure.
Exactly. So that's the...
Well, so far, based upon our interaction in the last handful of minutes, how do you think things are going from our interaction?
Fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, let me...
How about you? Can I ask you how you feel the same way?
I mean, it's obviously a unique situation from my perspective, but I feel very comfortable with our conversation, and I appreciate you taking the time to help educate us.
Great.
And develop an understanding, and it's refreshing to have... Some traffic stops are confrontational anyway, and I really said I've been doing this a long time, and I don't feel they need to be, so I try to approach everyone politely and respectfully and give people an explanation of what I'm doing, but it's a mutual exchange of information, and when we happen upon a situation like this where documentation starts coming that is very, very abnormal for us, I want to make sure I understand it so I can make the best informed decision I can, but when I have an opportunity to learn from somebody...
And I tell you what, I'm really appreciative of you guys out there, because there's a lot of really bad guys out there, and so I appreciate the time to...
Oh, you know what? Do you mind? One of our detectives has stopped by to see what's going on.
Okay.
He's actually very, very intelligent. I think he would like an opportunity to talk to you. Do you mind talking to him too?
No.
But I'm going to hold on to your card.
Okay.
And
could I get your card?
Absolutely. Detective Moore.
Hey. Shh. Sorry about that. She's harmless.
There you are, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let me just talk to him for real briefly, and I'll have him chat with you.
Okay.
And look for an email from me, because I do appreciate your time, all right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Got a minute and a half left here.
Hey, Corey.
Good afternoon.
Hey, I'm sorry. How do I say your last name again?
Well, it's a family name, and you can just call me Corey. It's pronounced Ibe.
Ibe. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry about that.
No worries.
I'm a detective that generally deals with the license plates
and
stuff, and I'm curious about your exempt plate.
Okay.
Can I ask you a few questions?
Sure. Yeah. If we get into a territory where I have to be careful, I'll let you know.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I'm just talking to you. So
beautiful.
You talk to me. We'll just be two people talking to each other. All right. What is? I see you have your registration here. When did you get the plate?
Remember? Well, yeah. It says right on there. I think it was the 16th of this month.
Oh, it was this month you got it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So you got it this month.
Yes.
And what office did you get it out of?
Costa Mesa.
Costa Mesa. Okay. Did you do it by mail or did you go in?
Went in. Yeah, they don't do these things by mail.
Okay. And then so you did it by mail, and then.
No, didn't do it by mail.
No, I did not do it by mail.
I'm sorry.
It's a difficult thing to understand.
And it's been a long day for me. I apologize.
Fair enough.
So you went in there and did it, and
it's been a long day, and you just blew his mind. He'd never seen such a document before.
Right.
And wow, that again, I'd listened to the full. I think what you had parsed out of the hour and a half stop was 45 minutes of interchange between you and August. And it's funny how names mean something. I mean, an August, occasion. This was an August occasion, Corey. You had a encounter by the side of the road that most of us abhor and are fearful of, and the Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young song comes to mind. Seeing lights in your rearview mirror, and the guy was totally cool.
He was, and I have to tell you, the audio. I can hear things in my voice, but I was very nervous. I had never been stopped before. I didn't know if I was going to be taken off to jail. And in this game, you have to be ready to be able to deal with that. And mentally, I'm ready to spend some time in jail, that I would stay calm and be very professional throughout the entire ordeal. But throughout that entire contact, I was worried that the officer might feel it necessary that I was going to have to be taken in. And that's a nerve-wracking time. So being able to stay calm, keep my hands on the steering wheel, be polite. It has served me well to consciously make the effort to stay calm, breathe deep, talk slowly, and do the best I can to inspire any officer that I come in contact with to honor his oath.
So there's little things like, what's your last name? I mean, you know, if you had answered, it's I, well, then you've, again, consented that you have a last name, and subsequently, they own the last name. It's right there on the birth certificate, the last name. And so now you've re-consented to be property.
That's right.
These are the little things. And it may, people may go, this is all just a bunch of nonsense. How can you, I mean, I'm sorry, everybody. These things matter. They matter significantly. And it's a Byzantine system that we've allowed to grow up around us. For some more context, your plates, the plates, I should say, that you obtained to put on the back of this government-owned car, because the government owns all the cars driving around in California.
They do. Yep.
They own every
They just
single
rent
one of them.
them back to you.
That's right. You just rent them back. You go pay the registration to rent the use of it. And that's, just look up MCO. What's that stand for, Corey? The
Manufacturer's Certificate of Origin. Sometimes it's also MSO, which means Manufacturer's Statement of Origin, which is the birth certificate to your car. If anybody goes out and buys a new car, as you're signing all those different documents, you'll see part of the process is you turn title of the vehicle over to the state. And that comes from when you purchase the car brand new from the dealer. You're going to take the car's birth certificate and sign over all the interest in the car to the state, and then begin to pay rent to the state for using the car, as well as paying for the automobile itself.
It's a hell of a racket.
Yeah. And it started from a time when people really trusted government. When they, inherently everybody knows government needs to have revenue in order to run. And the thought of registering automobiles this way, people didn't realize how dangerous it would become, how much power you turn over to the government when you allow them to do what they've done with automobile registration and driver's licenses and things. It started out very innocuously, very simple, and it took advantage of the people's goodwill towards their government at the beginning of the 20th century, when automobiles were first put on the scene. And clearly the government knew right away that, this is going to be a cash cow. This would be something they can make huge amounts of money on. And anytime they need more money, they just add another fee to your registration.
One of the early presidents, and I don't call him the first president, Corey, because there were, I think, 7 or 8 presidents prior to George Washington. We're just not taught about those presidents.
That's right.
George Washington was purportedly stated, he's been quoted as saying, it's a fairly famous statement, "Government is not reason. It is not eloquent. It is force. Like fire, it is a dangerous servant and a fearful master." And that is, the example, the trajectory of the DMV and the whole ownership of cars and vehicles is a classic example of that. So meanwhile, you were able to travel on your way. They left you unmolested, didn't issue a citation, correct?
That's correct. Mm-hmm. I think there's a little bit more on the tape there. I did order the official recording. The Detective Moore, in the brief moment when Officer August was explaining to Detective Moore kind of the situation, and he said he was not inclined to give me a citation, Officer Moore told him, "You have to give him a ticket. He doesn't have a license." And that is something that is interesting in the 1879 Constitution to show you how devious this is. In the Constitution for the state of California, 1879, it says that an agency may not enforce a law based on constitutional grounds unless the appellate court has said you can't enforce a law on constitutional grounds. So the government has gone through, the powers that be have bound officers to where their job could be in jeopardy for not giving you a ticket or not enforcing the law. And I mean, how crazy is that? To take the ability for an officer to decide whether or not something is constitutional at that moment, take that away from him.
An oath he's sworn to uphold.
Exactly. He's sworn to uphold the Constitution, yet he can be fired, have his career impacted severely for following the Constitution. And this might be a good time to bring that up. I have a feeling that Officer August, for what he did at the side of the road there, I think he has been affected negatively for this. With Irvine PD. I've not been able to get in touch with him. His contact information has been moved. It still shows that he's an officer there, but I fear that he may have had to pay a price in his professional career for following the Constitution and having a stop that went about this way. He didn't identify a crime that was an arrestable offense that he would be able to come up with a harm party or fraud or anything like that. And he followed the law and let me go.
Well, if you're listening to this pre-recorded show of Agenda 31 and you're inclined to participate in some level, you can call the non-emergency Irvine Police Department number, which is area code 949-724-7000, 949-724-7000, and ask to speak to Officer Matt August and see if you can get him on the line and thank him for how he treated Corey on the road. I think this was in May of last year.
It was July, I believe, of last year.
Summer of 2013. And, that he recognized Corey as one of the people of California 1849 and treated him as such. Since this happened, those plates mysteriously disappeared from that car, didn't it, Corey?
Well, it's not mysterious. About 2 weeks later, there was a setup. I was traveling again to go play disc golf. And I was stopped by Officer Moore, not to be confused with Detective Moore, but Officer Moore. And he couldn't be more opposite than Officer August in his interest in looking at the totality of circumstances. He pulled me over, and the first question was, what's up with the plates? I gave him all of my information, the same information that I gave to Officer August. And he just ignored all of it, wrote a citation, which means I was placed under arrest and charged in the specific sequence of first, middle, last, which is, like I said earlier, a benefit I don't qualify for. I controlled the signature on the citation, and I don't know if we have enough time today, but maybe another show we can go into a little bit deeper on that. But he did issue a citation, and he did it in such a way that I faced potential jail time, up to a year in jail, for driving without a license and a misdemeanor. The district attorney refused to prosecute that case, and it then proceeded as an infraction where the officer came in and provided evidence that was perjury in nature. He committed perjury, literally. But the way the traffic courts are set up, it's impossible in the traffic court, at least for my ability, my limited legal ability, it was impossible to prove anything. And on top of that, the judge, or he's actually a commissioner, during the traffic trial, refused exculpatory evidence that would tend to show my innocence. He wouldn't allow that on the record. So that is currently pending an appeal. And that went all the way back to, I'm sorry, it was the middle of June. It was August 1st that they actually confiscated the plates, the day that I was doing an appearance in court. They came out to the house and confiscated the license plates. And to see how much this is kind of boiled over into a real problem for everybody in government, the DMV has now falsified records to try and support the confiscation of the plates. They're hiding the person who ordered the plates be taken back. They've falsified the dates on certain records that they created, which I can prove. And now it's the laborious way of dealing with government and the Public Records Act and forcing all of this to be out in the open that I intend to show there was a conspiracy to deny me my secured right to domicile within California. The Irvine Police Department sent a letter that said that they consider this matter concluded, and I interpreted that as, leave us alone. But that's not what's going to happen. Anytime an officer lies, the Officer Moore, who issued the citation 2 weeks after this stop that we just heard, he falsified public records when I ordered the dash cam video. He sent video of a cop car parked in a shopping center parking lot for 40 minutes. It has nothing to do with the stop. He lied about an amendment to the citation because the court, again, I carefully controlled my signature on the citation, and the court rejected the citation. So he filed an amendment, which was kind of a loophole that allows an officer to force a traffic trial without a citation.
Without consent.
And without consent and without any resemblance of truth, it's able to force a traffic trial where there is no citation. And
this is because he's dealing with what he considers to be the first, middle, and last name construction of the property that his employer owns.
That's right. And anything to the contrary of that, he just is not going to recognize. And a big part of it, too, is now I've uncovered through this that the chief of police was never appointed by the city council. It was a corrupt appointment through the city manager, which the law, in the form of government that Irvine is, the law is very clear that they want to separate the city manager from the chief of police, that those two offices must be completely separate. And if you allow the city manager to control the chief of police, now the city council has no real power at all. The city manager is really the dictator over the city. Mm-hmm. And in Irvine, there is incredible amounts of corruption. And just my existence of traveling in a car with exempt plates, using my given and surname, and being domiciled in California 1849 exposes the corrupt nature of the people that are high up in government in Irvine and the more than $100 million that they've stolen from the Great Park.
You know, let's rewind a second on the Officer Moore. We call it the sunflower seed incident because that was his supposed premise of kidnapping you via a citation.
That's right.
And that was you were spitting sunflower seeds out the window, or the husks of seeds, and he tried to do a littering thing. But what I'm getting at is, let's go back to what you talked about at the very beginning of the show, Corey, and this concept of evaluating a hypothetical. How did you put that again?
Well, in order to get, freedom is a moral argument. And if you want to discuss the issue of freedom as a moral argument, it's important to take the hypothetical seriously.
There you go. Take the hypothetical seriously. And so let's take the hypothetical that an individual is brought into this world, never issued a birth certificate, never issued a social security number, never goes to a public school, never consents along the way to any of the GovCo adhesion contracts that are out there, and actually gets inside a automobile, all right, and traverses down the road and is pulled over by officer and spits sunflower seeds out the window, the husks of seeds out the window, and is pulled over by Officer Moore. All right, under threat of duress, essentially, flashing lights and guns. I mean, if you don't pull over, he'll call in back up, and there'll be a car chase, and they'll stop you and get their guns out. Right? I mean, right. You got to pull over. This is force. This is coercion. All right.
Yeah.
So then he rolls up on this hypothetical individual, and there's no record of this individual.
Right.
That's what we're talking about. This is the hypothetical. This is the status that Corey has achieved through lots of effort, and it's not a fun road to hoe.
Yeah, it certainly has not been profitable. I think it's vitally important, but it's something that I believe in order to prevent the Agenda 21 onslaught on our nation, the rise of tyranny, and just the absolute domination from federal government, that this is the path that has to be taken, and that is to reinstitute the original form of government that the Founding Fathers saw fit to put in place, where the federal government is separated from the people and cannot directly legislate upon the people.
I don't think the general populace, obviously the general populace, but even those who are trying to pay close attention and rail against the poor, bad behavior of government understand just how deep the federal government's claws have gotten into your local community. You have a letter from the chief of police of L.A. Essentially verifying that the so-called sworn officers of the L.A. Police Department are not state officers of California. They are, in fact, federal municipal officers.
That's correct. Yeah, the law is clear that peace officers must file their oath at the county recorder's office. And an LAPD officer, some of the LAPD officers had their oath at the county recorder and some didn't. And one officer that I had a contact with, it was a consensual contact, but he did conduct himself in a manner as being an officer of the state or a peace officer of California 1849. Mm-hmm. And his oath was not at the county recorder's office. So I had engaged with LAPD on this issue, as well as the county recorder, and that changed the behavior of both agencies. The county recorder will no longer record documents from an LA police officer. It's a non-recordable document, and LAPD sent a letter identifying that LAPD officers are not officers of the state. They are security guards for the federal corporation.
That's right. That's exactly what it is.
And I want this to be, I think this is really important. Chief Charlie Beck, I believe, in my contact with them, he wants to get it right. The federal corporation is allowed to have their security officers. They're allowed to have their own citizens. They're allowed to have all of this. They're just not allowed to force you into it against your will.
And the presumption remains that everybody walking around is federal property, and subsequently the federal security forces are going to treat you as such.